Hello everybody, it's Jabara here. This video is sponsored by NordPass, a new service powered by the more popular NordVPN service. NordPass not only generates highly complex passwords instantly, but also autofills and autosaves them, utilizing top-of-field encryption technology. In other words, that whole remember my password option that you always hesitantly click on but do it anyway because you're too lazy to type your password every time, can be done directly through NordPass with significantly more security, all the while containing a more complex password that can be generated with just the click of a button. You literally just click and log in with one master password for everything without having to think about anything else at all, while still protecting all of your passwords and personal account information better than you ever could before on your own. Not to mention, you'll never have to worry about forgetting or losing your passwords ever again. NordPass takes care of all of that and works on pretty much every internet browser, even some of those old weird ones that barely anybody even uses anymore. And don't worry, your mobile devices are safe too. You can get 50% off of the already ridiculously low price, plus an additional month for free if you use my promo code FROMNOTHING, or just go to nordpass.com/FromNothing, which I'll leave a link to below. So you will basically be getting this awesome service for just $2.49 a month, all the while supporting the continuation and growth of From Nothing in the process. Everybody wins. Anyway, without further ado, let's continue on with the video. Africa's countries today are largely the result of colonial borders that were carved up by European powers in the 19th and 20th centuries. This applies to both the geography and the naming of the countries. However, this is not the case for all of Africa's countries, as there are several exceptions to this rule. Today, I'm going to be giving you a breakdown of the top 13 African countries with names that are attributed to indigenous, pre-colonial kingdoms, or in some cases, names that have existed since pre-colonial times, however had origins in the ancient civilizations that interacted with them. Also, bear in mind the nomenclature of these countries varies from country to country, but for the sake of this video, we'll specifically cover the anglicized versions. Mali is a country in West Africa that was once the site of numerous kingdoms in the past, including the Songhai Empire, which was the largest indigenous African empire in history. However, the most famous of these empires was the Mali Empire, which the modern-day country takes its name, though the modern-day country covers considerably less area and doesn't correspond to the medieval borders. Though the country is not a direct continuation of this powerful state, which collapsed in the late 17th century, the ruling dynasty known as the Keita dynasty still survives to present, and many of the empire's most important cities still exist today within modern Mali's borders, including Timbuktu, Djenné, and Gao. Mali was also once ruled by the richest man in all of history, Mansa Musa, and housed some of the largest libraries in the entire medieval world. So this one is a little awkward. Benin was a powerful empire in what is now modern-day Nigeria, only its indigenous name was Edo or Ubinu, which was later corrupted to Bini by surrounding ethnic groups, before being further corrupted by the early Portuguese explorers to Benin. And sorry, this isn't where the awkwardness ends either. So the modern day country of Benin is located in an entirely different area and is home to entirely different ethnic groups that bear no relation to Benin whatsoever. In fact, the region roughly corresponds with the kingdom of Dahomey, a polity founded by the Fon people in the 17th century. The modern day country was actually named after the Bight of Benin, a body of water named after the kingdom of Benin that encompasses an area spanning much of coastal West Africa. So yeah, definitely a bit of a weird situation. Next we have Zimbabwe. So this one is also a little tricky and arguably should not be on the list. Though it is named after an indigenous kingdom, we technically don't even know what the indigenous kingdom was called. Zimbabwe simply means Great Stone Houses in the local Shona languages. Founded roughly in the 11th century and falling roughly in the 15th century, Zimbabwe is a kingdom that we know very little about. This is due to two factors. For one, a lack of the written record, and two, the exploitation of European colonists who attempted to uncover some sort of foreign, exotic origin of the civilization, desperately trying to prove that black people were incapable of building something so impressive. Much of what we do know comes from the minuscule scraps of what remains in the modern era, as well as the efforts of some earlier and more progressive archaeologists in the past, such as Gertrude Caton Thompson. After being colonized by Europeans in the 19th century, the country was named to Rhodesia after British politician Cecil Rhodes, which was then renamed to Zimbabwe after decolonization. Conveniently, the modern borders correspond fairly closely with the region that is proposed to have been under control of the ancient kingdom. To this day, Zimbabwe as well as the neighboring countries of Mozambique and South Africa are littered with hundreds of stone ruins, and the bird symbol used on the flag is based on one of the large bird statues found on top of the Great Zimbabwe Wall. So I'm sure by this point you're probably beginning to see a pattern of trickiness or awkwardness with these names. This one also has quite a few quirks. For one, Ghana wasn't actually the name of a kingdom, but instead it was a royal title used by the people of the ancient West African Empire of Wagadu, which was the oldest known empire in West Africa. Secondly, the modern country has no direct relation to this empire. Thirdly, it's located in a completely different location than the modern country, with the Wagadu Empire being located along the western bend of the Niger River, and the modern-day country being located much farther south along the Atlantic coast, with borders corresponding roughly to those of the Ashanti Empire, a powerful pre-colonial state that fended off British invasions for over 100 years during the 18th and 19th centuries. Ghana was also the first sub-Saharan nation to gain independence from Europeans on March 6, 1957, and promptly changed its name from Gold Coast to Ghana, as a means of detaching itself from colonial influence, while also reviving a distinctly African identity. Like Ghana, Angola was a kingdom named after a royal title rather than an actual political entity. It is derived from the word Angola, which was a title used within the kingdom of Mdango, a former vassal to the kingdom of Congo. The name was later applied to the region as a whole after it was conquered by the Portuguese, which corrupted it to the word Angola. Famously, the kingdom of Mdango was ruled by Queen Nzinga, or Ngola Nzinga, see how that works, an outstanding diplomat and negotiator that held off Portuguese incursions and even defeated their armies on numerous occasions. She also famously opened the gates of her kingdom to runaway slaves, in an effort to offer a safe haven for those trying to avoid Portuguese attempts at colonization or enslavement, as well as to build a formidable core of allies. The present-day country of Ethiopia has historically been home to several ancient and medieval indigenous kingdoms, including Damat, Aksum, and of course, Ethiopia. Though the name Ethiopia itself has its origins with the ancient Greeks, loosely translating to land of the burnt faces, and used to denote all peoples of sub-Saharan African stock, notably the Nubians. Almost certainly due to its biblical usage, it was Amharized or corrupted into local Ethiopian languages and used indigenously to denote their country for the past several centuries. This was no doubt done as a means of legitimatizing and solidifying their position in the Christian world, a similar strategy to what was most likely done with their ancient Solomonic dynasty. Ethiopia is also notable for being the only African nation to successfully defeat a full-scale European attempt at colonization, making it the only indigenous African polity to remain independent after the scramble for Africa. Now, this is an easy one. Egypt is arguably the oldest continuous political entity in the history of the world, boasting a centralized and literate state for over 5,000 years. Despite being conquered by several powerful empires throughout history such as the Kushites, Romans, and Assyrians, and being geographically located at a crossroads of cultures and continents, Egypt has still managed to stand the test of time and retain its own distinct presence in the world. While the name Egypt is nothing short of an extreme corruption, its original origins rest in the indigenous peoples, from the word Ikupta. The modern name, however, is the result of being continuously recycled between various languages throughout history. Famously, the Greeks, whom refer to the land as Aegyptos, which the English name Egypt derives from. Historically, Morocco has been home to some of Africa's most powerful civilizations. Famously, the Almoravid dynasty that controlled nearly every kingdom on the Iberian Peninsula of Western Europe, as well as the Ghana Empire, which at the time was arguably sub-Saharan Africa's most powerful state. There was also the Saudi dynasty that not only defeated the Portuguese in 1578 in the Battle of Alcazar, but also the powerful Songhai Empire of West Africa less than a decade later in the Battle of Tondibi. While the nomenclature of Morocco's historical empires are usually pegged to the ruling dynasty, the name of the modern country also has historical origins, as it is derived from the ancient city of Marrakech. Marrakech served as the capital of several of the country's historical empires and remains an important city to present, so it's no wonder that the modern-day country would take this name. Today, Congo is a name that is shared by two Central African countries, both of which have borders that intercept a region that was once home to the Kingdom of Congo. At one point, there were 3 different European powers that had their own Congo. Angola, however, more closely corresponds to the indigenous borders. This medieval kingdom was one of the first to be contacted by Europeans during the Age of Exploration and the earliest to convert to Christianity during that era. The region boasted a thriving and complex culture and economy and controlled a formidable military that successfully fought off the Portuguese on numerous occasions as relations between the two kingdoms gradually soured over time. One thing about Congo that makes it particularly interesting is that it, as well as surrounding polities, emerged with little to no trade or interaction from more well-connected kingdoms like those of East Africa and West Africa. This fact is a true testament to how Africans were still able to build complex civilizations even when relatively isolated from the outside world. Lesotho is an enclave country surrounded on all sides by South Africa. Over 90% of the population belongs to the Basotho ethnic group, from which the country takes its name, which is also shared by the Kingdom of Lesotho, founded by King Mashushu. Whoa, that's a lot of rhyme. It was founded in 1822, right in the dawn of the scramble of Africa. The Basotho people are known for living at a very high altitude, and one of the few regions of Africa that receive regular annual snowfall. As a result of this, they can regularly be seen draped in traditional blankets of fantastic colors and patterns. Blankets that were famously portrayed in Marvel's award-winning movie, Black Panther. Like Ethiopia, the name Zanzibar does not have indigenous origins, but it's pre-colonial in nature. It loosely derives from an Arabic word meaning land of the blacks. Alternatively, the name Sudan also shares the same meaning, but has historically been used in reference to the peoples directly south of the Sahara, notably the kingdoms of West Africa. Zanzibar, on the other hand, derives from the word Zanj, which early Arab traders would use to denote the indigenous peoples of the East African coast collectively. Historically, a collection of wealthy city-states comprised the region that is now in Zanzibar, as well as several other trade ports that extended hundreds of miles along the East African coast. However, from the 17th century onwards, it periodically changed hands between Portuguese and Omani rulers until the middle of the 20th century. These last 3 will be discussed collectively since they are small nations that have close historical ties with one another. Uganda actually takes its name from the kingdom of Buganda, which still exists on a subnational level in southern central Uganda, with its king actually still holding considerable political power within the country. The countries of Rwanda and Burundi also take their names from pre-colonial African states, and collectively, these 3 kingdoms, along with several others that historically existed in the region such as Bunyoro, once comprised what are frequently referred to as the Great Lakes Kingdoms. Throughout the Middle Ages, the African Great Lakes region hosted up to 30 of these complex kingdoms, founded by Bantu migrants. Through oral history, most of these kingdoms claim that their existence was the result of the collapse and subsequent fracturing of an ancient empire known as Kitara. One particularly impressive feat found within this region is the indigenous practice of the Caesarean section, developed independently. Despite its name, Roman Emperor Julius Caesar was not born this way, and despite isolated instances of the practice taking place in China and medieval Europe, the people of Africa's Great Lakes kingdoms are the only ones known to perfect it to the point where both the mother and the child survived the operation, prior to the introduction of modern Western medicine in the region. It was first recorded in writing when British anthropologist Robert William Falcon was shocked to witness the sophisticated procedure carried out successfully in the late 19th century. Anyway guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, leave a like and a subscribe if you're not already. Let me know down in the comment section below what other top 10s, or in this case, top 13 videos that you'd like to see. Also, don't forget to support the channel by using my promo code at the link down below. I'll see you guys next time, and always remember, we don't come from nothing.